Good afternoon from Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin. We're broadcasting from Rigel Studios here in Las Vegas, Nevada. This show is about guns, related politics, and self-defense issues. Fired Up is on our website, firedupwithbobirwin.com. A new show is posted every Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific time. New shows also appear on YouTube and numerous other media. I can't even keep track anymore. The audio feed is rebroadcast for radio listeners Saturdays at noon on the Nevada Talk Network. Check out KELY1230.com for a station in your area. Questions and comments, you can send an email to bob@firedupmail.com, bob@firedupmail.com, or leave a message on my office recorder, 257-1060. That is 257-1060. I check that recorder at least a couple of times a day if you want to leave me a message. If you leave contact information, I'll respond by email, text, or telephone. My guest today has his own contact information. We'll get to that just a little bit later in the show. There are several hundred defensive uses of firearms every week in the United States, rarely covered by any mainstream media, but we always present a few of those for our listeners' education. Generally, most we use are good shooting. Some are questionable. Sometimes they're just plain wrong, but they're all educational for people who own firearms or carry a firearm all the time. Individual incidents are generally adjudicated under local law, so advice here might not apply to listeners in different jurisdictions. The incidents are as reported, except we generally eliminate the names of the players involved. My guest today is California and Nevada attorney Donald J. Green. Don, a bit of your background, if you would.
Okay. Well, thank you. For your listeners and viewers who don't know me by now, my name is Don Green, and I've been licensed in California and Nevada going on 36 years. The emphasis of my practice has to do with firearms, whether it's the use of the firearms, the illegal possession of the firearms, or in some cases, representing federal firearms licensees. I represent gun shows. I represent people in administrative appeals to the FBI. I represent people before the ATF. I represent people in stolen firearms cases before the ATF, like we have one now, a Class 3 weapon which is missing from a gun store. So we do all this work, and your listeners can reach me 24 hours a day at 702-409-8239. My phone is always on or on silent, or when I'm in federal court, it has to be off. But you're always welcome to call me on that number. Thank you.
Yeah, and it is. This guy never sleeps.
Sometimes.
This first story, I've had stories on before where people did several things wrong. This, in 5 years of doing this show, this may be the most things wrong I've seen in a single incident. You can judge from that when we get there. This is from KOTV6 in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Is reported on the 15th of this month, a week ago from the time we're taping this. Tulsa police say a church member shot a suspected burglar at the Church of Christ near Pine and Sheridan. Officers say this church had been burglarized several times for the copper in the past 2 weeks, the copper inside the walls and the air conditioners and so on. Police were called out for a possible burglary overnight on Thursday, but didn't find anything at the time. 2 church members stayed overnight to keep an eye on the church, and allegedly they were putting up additional security cameras. Sometime around 4 a.m. Thursday morning, the church members told officers they heard someone on the roof of the church. The church members came outside to confront a male suspect, and then shots were fired. The suspected burglar was hit in the stomach. He was still able to speak to police. He was able to talk, and he talked to the cops, and was taken to the hospital. No additional information was given as to his condition at this time. The minister at the Church of Christ said thieves have destroyed all their air conditioning units to get the copper. They don't have any air conditioning working inside the church at the moment. It's rather frustrating to have people come out and invade, the house and destroy properties that cost a lot of money, the minister of the church said. He added they will finish installing the security cameras and put cages around their air conditioning units. I hardly know where to begin on this case. No weapons mentioned on the intruder and no physical aggression. Everyone is annoyed about criminals stealing copper from buildings, even more so, I assume, from a church. Without any more details, this appears to be a property crime with no physical danger presented to those guarding the church. The church will certainly face a civil lawsuit, and the shooter may well face serious criminal charges, the guy who works for the church. Wherever you want to start, I have no place to begin on this. Don, it's
Bob, this is like a law school bar examination. Here's the thing, is that in California, the 2 church members are going to go to jail. So they'll be calling me from whatever jail. First, the shooter is facing attempt murder, conspiracy, discharge of a firearm from an occupied business, discharge of a firearm in an area where people can be hit. In addition, here's the thing. They were lying in wait. They were lying in wait for the suspect. And lying in wait is an aggravating factor in a death penalty case. So if they kill the suspect, who's expected to live, as I understand,
as far as we know,
then they're possibly facing the death penalty with the aggravated factor, again, of lying in wait. I don't see where there's a 911 call when, around 4 a.m., they heard someone on the roof. They came out. I don't see where there's a 911 call. Simple thing to do. 911. There's somebody on the roof of the church at 1555 Mockingbird Lane. We're inside. And you point out, where's the great bodily injury or death? Where is that presented here in this case? Well, if the suspect got through the roof, came through the air conditioner vent or whatever, and came out and started shooting you, that's a different story. But they came out and confronted the male subject, and shots were fired. Suspects hit in the stomach, but still able to go to speak to the police. Now in Oklahoma, this might be a good shooting, but in California, serious questions. Nevada, serious questions. Again, there's no fear because they went to confront the suspect, and there's no objective fear of great bodily injury or death. I think these 2 suspects, I think everybody's going to jail in this case.
I would expect so, even in Oklahoma. They have some pretty liberal, conservative from our perspective, self-defense laws. At least their permitting system and so forth is one of the best in the countries. They have very, very good laws for gun owners. But I can't imagine even there, certainly the civil lawsuits coming against them and the church itself. I can't see. I was trying to find something in this that looked like they did it right. And they actually dotted every I and crossed every T that was what you don't want to do, and then claim self-defense.
Precisely.
They're all there. I hope it works out for them. I don't think they intended to do anything wrong. And that may be their only hook, that to commit a crime you have to have intent, as I understand it, but I don't know how the case law in Oklahoma reads on that either. So we'll find out. This second story is from the Clarendon Ledger. It was reported on the 19th of this month, a couple days ago. We're showing this a week later, so it's a week, 10 days ago from your time, viewers. In Lamar County, Mississippi, Sheriff Danny Rigel, R-I-G-E-L, wow, just like us, said a shooting occurred around 7 p.m. in the Little Black Creek Road area in Lumberton. A 911 call came in about a fight at that location. Another call came soon after to report a 31-year-old male had been shot twice. When deputies arrived, 2 people were performing cardiopulmonary resuscitation, that's easier for me to say, on the wounded 31-year-old. One of them told deputies he was the person who shot the wounded man. The sheriff said several witnesses saw the fight, told deputies the 31-year-old wounded man was the aggressor. They said the fight started at one location. The shooter left the scene, but the wounded man had followed him and continued the fight. The sheriff noted there was a gun in the glove box of the truck that the attended victim was in. He added the guy came running at him, and the eventual shooter, told him to stop, but he wouldn't. He shot the 31-year-old twice and then performed CPR on him. The 31-year-old was pronounced dead on arrival at the local hospital. Their local coroner, his name is Cody Creel. When the investigation and autopsy are complete, the case will be turned over to the district attorney's office, obviously, to present it to a grand jury, which is their custom. After talking to witnesses and investigating the scene, Sheriff Rigel said the shooting appears to have been in self-defense. I agree with the sheriff's opinion. Unless the investigation turns up something unknown, this is clearly a good shoot. I'm not sure the sheriff's opinion to the media is going to affect much at the grand jury, but the facts probably will bear out what he said from what I can see so far. In some cases, warnings and a display of your firearm just are not enough. We've talked often on this show about the 90% of bad guys run when warned or have a firearm pointed at them or told they're going to get shot. In some areas, in high crime areas, it maybe not make the 90% or 95%. But in this case, the display was not enough. The opponent here is so agitated and so unaware of reality, they continue the threat right to the end. In this case, the end of their life. It doesn't always work. I harp on warnings, and yeah, this is the 5 to 10% of guys that you really need to carry your gun for.
That's correct. Now, here's the thing that where training is going to be very critical to a situation like this. When displaying your weapon, you make sure you say, drop the weapon, drop the knife, so that little old lady coming out of Walmart at 10:30 is going to say that the guy in the brown shirt who had the weapon had shouted, drop the knife, drop the weapon. If you don't say that when the little old lady comes out of Walmart and she's interviewed by the police, she's going to say the guy in the brown shirt shot the other guy. You see what I mean? And this is just training. And you point out something very, very essential. Continued threat. People do not always fall down when they're shot. And in this case, the guy goes after them. And the fight continues. Fortunately, someone called 911. Should the shooter have been performing CPR? In Nevada, there's no duty to do that. Although if you want to do it for, good Samaritan reasons or because it's the Christian thing to do, then you do it. You might have civil liability too if the guy dies. The family's going to say, wait a minute, he performed CPR wrong, and therefore the airway was not cleared or whatever, which the paramedics would have done. Therefore, my brother is dead. Now, there's the key point in as I see it from a legal standpoint in this whole story is the word aggressor. And so the bad guy was the initial aggressor, because in Nevada, that word aggressor is specific in the Nevada Revised Statutes. It says you cannot be the primary aggressor. It's written in the way that it presents. You must prove yourself. And that's what I would do in my cases. What was he doing? Well, number one, he was coming towards me. Number two, we'd already been in a fight. We tried to get away. So he's running towards me. He's in a fight. There's some shooting. So I felt that there was great bodily harm or injury at that moment in time. And that's what we have to focus on as the defense attorney. Again, the word aggressor, and whoever told them that, and the witnesses, they used the proper language, because I would ask that witness on the stand, what did you say to the police? I said that the bad guy on the ground was the primary aggressor. And that's you're halfway home if you have a witness who says that, in addition to your saying, hey, drop the weapon, so that that little old lady who's across the street can see that you're the one who shouted and you're not the bad guy.
Yep. Exactly. And Don Green brought something to mind when he was talking about that. Back when I was a cop, you know, we had CPR training every year, and I renewed, I don't know how many times I've been through the class. And it's changed a little bit, and we get bulletins now, you know, do this instead of that. But having not had an active current CPR card, I had not thought about that. If I see somebody get shot or fall down and I give them CPR, that could be the exact argument.
Exactly.
I'm liable for helping them because I could have killed them. What society do we live in where that statement from Mr. Green is true? And unfortunately, it is true. You can't win for losing.
That's right.
It's ridiculous. Anyway, we've got some slides here from some of our friends and associates, which I'd like to put up to encourage you to participate with these businesses. Freestyle Martial Arts, they can be reached at 702-551-9009. They're at the corner of Jones and Russell here in Las Vegas. Great guy, Tel Gokor, Gokor, that I told you to call. They train UFC fighters, and this guy is a marvelous instructor for self-defense. My friend CCS Gunsmithing, Chris Eifelt, he runs the NRA programs. He's got an event coming up here in another month or so, I think on the 21st of September. He does the NRA promotions where they have their auctions and all the money proceeds go to the NRA. I'll be covering that more thoroughly as it gets nearer the time for that. The cost to get in it is $100, and you get so many drawing tickets and this and that. He can be reached at 702-365-1732. 702-365-1732. He's also a pretty good gunsmith. If you want something fixed or built, he can do that.
You just worked on mine.
Jerry Creed, the slide viewers are looking at says estate planning. Jerry is a great attorney, been on a show several times. For our perspective, he does trusts for guns, and particularly for Class 3 trusts. He can be reached at 702-806-7777. Jerry is a great specialist in elder situations, wills, and so forth. But from our perspective, if you need a gun trust, you're trying to leave firearms in this ever-changing rules that's going on now to your heirs, get a hold of Jerry and have him write you up a trust that will stick under current laws. Donald J. Green, attorney at law, gun litigation, et cetera, et cetera. You can reach him basically 24/7 at 702-409-8239. I know that because he always answers his phone because it's rung several times while we're doing this show. And he is the guy to call if you are involved in a firearms case where it's a question of liability, particularly though in questions of legal things with laws and whether you got the right license or couldn't get your CCW or didn't have your record sealed properly and so forth and so on. Don does all of that stuff. If it's got a trigger on it and it causes you a problem, give Don Green a call. Maggie Mordaunt, look up CCW Maggie, CCW MAGGIE. Search that on the web. You will find all of her various websites. She teaches all sorts of classes in firearms training. She can be reached at 702-376-5900. But you'll find more information on the website. Just go to CCW Maggie and punch search, and you will find everything you need to know Great instruction from her and her husband. And last, and certainly not least, my friend Bob Ansara's Ricardo's Restaurant. He's at Flamingo and Decatur. He can be reached at 702-227-9100. That's 702-227-9100. The level best Mexican food in town, and banquet rooms and so forth. Lots of people have meetings there and award ceremonies. So there's all sorts of rooms that have electronic stuff in it for screens and this and that you can have company meetings and so forth. Great place to go. Ricardo's. And we are back. This last story has to do with the current stuff that's going on in Congress. We talked a couple of special shows about it in the last week or so. Yes. And President Donald Trump announced on Wednesday, once again, he backed tighter background checks for gun purchases, but says he wants to be careful that closing what he calls loopholes don't clear the way for more gun control. The loopholes he's talking about, one is the HIPAA rules. That's the rules we have in medical treatment, that doctors cannot release any information about your condition or whatever to anybody ever. And you may have signed a release that you don't want your medical records being revealed. When we are trying to find people that are mentally ill, which I personally, and I think the president also agrees, the driver of all of these recent mass shootings, which are no more frequent than they were 10 years ago, by the way, is mental illness. The commonality isn't race or politics or any of that stuff. The commonality is they're nuts, the people that are doing this, and they've been under mental care, taking hallucinogenic drugs and so forth and so on. We need to know that background information to put them in a database that shows the mental illness so we can intervene before they start shooting up something. The second loophole is juvenile records disappear once these young criminals reach age 18. They are simply released, and the records are there, but they're sealed in the juvenile system. At one time in my life, I was a youth parole officer here in Nevada. And I've seen this firsthand, where sometimes a truly demented criminal is released from supervision and goes out and preys on new victims. I have had, most of the kids that go through that system are trying to get better. And the wonderful people that are their counselors are really wonderful people. You'd love to have them a next door neighbor. They're really nice. They love everybody. They love kids. But they don't really understand, most of them, street violence, and that some of these kids, 5%, 10%, are just can't be released on society. I know this is what the president called a very slippery slope, and it must be handled in a way that a judge has to see what's going on in order to release the information when they're doing a background check. And it has to be done in such a way that the information comes out that is prohibitive, that immediately, in a matter of days I'm talking, you can appeal that decision and appear before the judge that issued the order that says you can't get a gun and explain your side of it. That system works great. When you're accused of a crime, you get to have an appearance in court. That's how America works. So the system has to be put together that will do those two things. Make the records available to those who need them in real cases, and give you an appeal process that is immediate, that you can present your side to a judge and have him change his mind. Mr. Green.
Bob, 2 points. As I see it, even though we're going to have this red flag law in Nevada, effective in January 2020. The problems which I see in California, where a similar law has been in effect for several years, is that regardless of what the proponents of gun control say, there is really no effective way for you to defend yourself when it comes to a firearm in a court. Because you're going in at a disadvantage because someone has already said you're mental. And when you come in and you see a psychiatrist or you see a psychologist, is that not something which the feds could use to say, wait a minute, you saw a psychiatrist or psychologist? Yes, but I saw the psychiatrist for the purposes of seeing if I could get a weapon. Now, it's insane. And that also goes, now listen, the point you make about the HIPAA rules, let's go back to November of 2016 or December of 2016. Remember that when Proposition 1 was passed for the background checks, the Nevada Department of Public Safety sent a letter to the FBI. And that FBI letter came back and said, we're not going to do anything with Proposition 1 because it violates federal law. And the FBI letter said that the states, and Nevada in particular, are in a better position to have the local records on mental health and temporary protective orders, which might not show up in the system. I have a protective order from a case we did in 2018, and the protective order was buried in like page 6 of a 20-page divorce decree in Bergen County, New Jersey. And that TPO came up in an in a background check in which my guy was denied his firearm. And we appealed it to the FBI through the proper process, and that took approximately 23 months. And finally, we got that letter in December of 2018. The client comes to my office. He's in tears because he's going to get his firearm because we won the case, because the TPO, no one had ever challenged it from, 26 years? It had been in effect. Yep. So you have to check these things out. And that's why the FBI said, we're not in a position to allow Nevada to use this Proposition 1. And now with these background checks, they've cleared it up a little bit. I like what they've done as far as 3 things. 1, it's free. 2, there's no tax. And 3, in the preamble, it says that in Nevada, we have the right to bear arms. But with that responsibility comes that we got to keep weapons out of the hands of felons and those domestic abusers and those who are subject to temporary protective orders.
Justice delayed is justice denied. You heard that somewhere?
Yes.
Yeah. Day one of law school, I think. Western Trails Gun Show is this upcoming weekend from the date of this broadcast. August 31st and September 1 is at the Palace Station Hotel Casino, right there on
Sahara.
Sahara. Yeah.
Yes.
Sahara, right over the hump from the Strip.
Yes.
It's a great show. Attorney Don Green and I will be there with advice and perhaps some predictions on where some of these laws are going. All this stuff is changing on a daily basis. Another group I'm a member of, Keystone Corporation, will have their annual dinner in October. It's on October 30th at the Venetian Hotel. The guest speaker is Trey Gowdy.
Yes.
The guy that if you're a conservative, you really want to hear. The tickets are expensive. I believe they're running about $700. You can find that out at info@KeystoneNevada.com. info@KeystoneNevada, one long word, .com. We will be back next week with another edition of Fired Up. We'll see you at the gun show this coming weekend. And all this stuff is changing on a day-to-day basis,
yes, it
folks.
is.
So remember, you can find logo merchandise that support this store at firedupwithboberwinstore.com. And the show is repeated on radio Saturdays at noon. Thanks for listening. Have a great weekend.
Thank you again, Bob.